Adelanda, and this is Solarpunking, where we discuss solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. I have so many things that I want to talk about on this podcast that I constantly struggle with deciding between two or more topics for each episode. This week, I couldn't decide if I wanted to talk about peace, hope, or justice. And then I started reading all the articles about Iran, and I changed my mind again, with less than a few hours left to finish writing this episode if I wanted to finish on time for it to post Sunday afternoon. So today we're going to talk about justice. What would justice look like under solarpunk ideology? I think police abolitionists answer this question really well. So let's start us off with a clip from beautifultrouble.org called Abolition, Reimagining Justice, which talks about how we can create a more just world through preventative action.
Abolition isn't just about tearing down prisons and police. It's about reimagining a world where harm is addressed without relying on violent systems. It's a vision for a society where we build safety through community, accountability, and care. As Angela Davis asks, why do we have no other well-resourced options? Abolition challenges us to create those alternatives, where justice doesn't mean punishment, but transformation. It's about imagining what's possible, taking steps to reduce harm, rebuild trust, and ensure that everyone has what they need: safety, dignity, and hope. The abolitionist journey starts with us. Let's ask ourselves, what kind of world can we build together?
They mentioned the legendary Angela Davis in this clip, which is funny because I wanted to use an excerpt from an interview she did with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill in Al Jazeera, where she speaks in depth about abolitionism. I couldn't find a good spot to cut it though, so I decided to just link the entire interview in the notes for folks to check out later. I highly recommend it. But on the surface, the idea is that if we are able to focus our attention on ensuring that people have the resources they need, then we can eliminate sources of crime and violence before they happen. This is done by funding housing, education, food scarcity, healthcare, childcare, and other unmet needs a community might be struggling with, instead of constantly pouring money into police departments and detention facilities. You're less likely to steal food if you have a full belly. You're less likely to self-medicate if you have access to compassionate medical care. In fact, a study in the International Journal of Drug Policy called Changes in Arrests Following Decriminalization of Low-Level Drug Possession in Oregon and Washington suggests that Oregon and Washington's decriminalization policies dramatically reduced arrests for drug possession and did not lead to increased arrests for violent crimes. Reimagining the ways we address these issues as a society is the first step here. Angela Davis envisions a future where necessities are not commodified, and that's punk. That's literally what solarpunk is about. I think you'll find that anti-capitalism will be a common theme here as well. Solarpunk is inherently anti-capitalist because capitalism at its root is exploitation. I think in order to understand what I mean by this, you can look at multi-level marketing schemes, which are modeled after pure capitalist ideology. In MLMs, people at the top of the pyramid are rewarded for the labor of those below them, and in order to remain profitable, they have to find more and more people to exploit for infinite growth. I might do a more extensive episode about capitalist ideology in the future, but the point here is that capitalism thrives on exploiting the working class, and it grants power and influence to those at the top of the pyramid, stripping agency and justice from those at the bottom. I really like this clip of Kwame Ture from a speech he did at UCLA in 1973. I cut it down for conciseness, but I recommend listening to the entire speech.
We must understand clearly when we talk about capitalism, who are the capitalists? As if we understand that there are only a few people who own and control the means of production in the society, then we begin to understand that there are a few capitalists. And these capitalists exploit everybody because everybody works for them. Everybody sells their labor to them. It is by selling your labor to a capitalist that he's really able to exploit you. And you must know something about capitalism. Very important. The sole motivating force The sole motivating force in a capitalist society is profit. Profit. That is the sole motivating force. Profit. Get money. Get it. Get it as fast as you can. Get it any way you can, but get it. Just get it. Just get it. Just get it. It's the overall philosophy. When we talk about revolution, we must talk about changing values. We must talk about changing values, and we must understand these values.
That is what I mean when I say that capitalism is inherently unjust, and why solarpunk at its core is inherently anti-capitalist. Justice isn't just about laws or order, it's about fairness. It's about equity, empathy, and the kind of repair that goes beyond punishment or profit. It's about making things right, not just keeping things running. Capitalism by design distributes power and resources based on wealth, not human value. It elevates those who hoard, extract, and exploit while pushing aside those who nurture, build, and resist. It decides who gets to live well and who gets left behind. There's nothing fair about a system that rewards inherited wealth and punishes inherited struggle. Justice asks us to see each other, to protect the most vulnerable, and to acknowledge historic harm, and to prioritize collective well-being over individual gain. That's solarpunk. It challenges extraction with regeneration, domination with cooperation, and disposability with care. Where capitalism commodifies life, solarpunk reimagines it as sacred, shared, and sustainable. We also can't really talk about justice without acknowledging the role racism plays in it, especially in America. Black Americans and immigrants have tried for centuries to exist in a justice system that was built to oppress them in this country. I personally have found law school to be exceptionally challenging. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, because to experience racial injustice is one thing, but to be faced with the normalization of systemic racial injustice in plain writing is an entirely different experience. So I was able to find the clip of Kimberly Latrice Jones's Black Lives Matter speech about economic injustice, and at the risk of being struck with a copyright claim, I wanted to play as much as I possibly could right now. It's not easy to find if you don't know exactly what to search for, and I was only able to find one reputable source that I was confident in using. I'm going to play it now, and I highly recommend checking out some of the interviews she did when the speech went viral in 2020.
Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're going to get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need? And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
That speech is so powerful, and I definitely recommend checking out the full version, which I'll link below, because I had to clip some bits of it for time. Before I go, I also want to acknowledge that it's been a rough week. I am tired. I'm tired, and I know you're tired. For people who envision the type of equitable, joyful world we do, being confronted with the reality of exploitation and cruelty that is so far from that goal can be incredibly draining. That's why on this podcast, you're going to hear me say the word community 1,000,000 times or more. I truly believe we can only get through this and even start to build better if we do it together. I believe it's possible with my full chest, and I want to give you some of the hope that keeps me going. I'm not reckless with my optimism, though. I know that it is very likely that I am planting a seed whose shadow I may never actually get to sit beneath, like my ancestors did for me. I still think that it's worth it, though. But be mindful of burnout. A lot is happening all at once, and it can be hard to keep up with it all. Please be kind to yourself and allow yourself moments of self-care when possible. I'll leave you with one of my favorite clips from the animated series The Boondocks, which has guided me through my feelings of helplessness many, many times.
Thanks, Granddad. Granddad, what do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do?
You do what you can.
Thanks for listening to episode 3 of Solarpunking. You can catch new episodes every Sunday this summer, where I will talk about solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. If you're financially able, consider making a donation to Relief International at ri.org. Relief International is a nonprofit organization authorized by OFAC and the Iranian authorities to operate in Iran. They have an OFAC license for humanitarian purposes and are able to accept tax-exempt donations from Americans and others to support ongoing relief and development operations in Iran. Until next week, stay hydrated and motivated.